This video ranks all of the legendary brawlers from worst to best. Now you may not have all the legendary brawlers, but I still highly recommend you watch to the end of the video so you know which legendary brawler to unlock and max out next. Alright guys, the first legendary brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Chester. Now Chester's going to be considered one of the worst legendary brawlers in the game because he struggles due to the RNG with his super. Not being able to have the consistency with his super can cost him in some situations because he could get a super he doesn't need in that specific moment. Now something that can at least help him somewhat stand his ground in the meta just a tiny bit is his Bellomania star power. This is definitely one of the more positive things about his entire kit since he can actually do more damage to burst down the enemies. Just make sure before you go into battle using the Bellomania star power you have either your 2 bells or 3 bells attack queued up next. This will just make it so that either your 3 bells or 4 bells attack is next, which should be enough damage to defeat almost all of the brawlers in the entire game. Now since Chester's main attacks spread out the more bells that he has, it's important that you get as close as possible to the enemies so that most of your bells can hit them. This is something that's critical when playing Chester because you need to hit as many bells as you can. However, he doesn't have a lot of health, so if he does get close, he could possibly get bursted down before he can defeat the enemy in time. Alright guys, the next legendary brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Crow. Now Crow is a really weak legendary and brawler in general because he's just been nerfed into the ground. He's been receiving constant nerfs to his extra toxic star power and his slowing toxic gadget for a long time now. At this point, it doesn't matter which star power or gadget you use because both star powers and gadgets are equally as strong. Now not only is he getting nerfs to his star powers and gadgets, his overall just mechanics like his damage and his health is so weak too. Like I said, Crow doesn't have a lot of health, so he'll get bursted down by strong meta brawlers like Sandy and Max that like to go aggro and pressure him fast. Crow also doesn't deal a lot of damage, so he'll get out DPS'd and not be able to burst down high HP brawlers in time before they reach Crow. Now one of the positive things that Crow is still going to be good at is scouting bushes because of the poison damage that he can do. A constant poison from Crow just makes it impossible for the enemies to sneak up onto you in bushes, and they will never be able to heal up to maintain control. Other than that though, Crow is just going to really struggle in this meta. Alright guys, the next legendary brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Spike. Now Spike is still considered to be a really strong anti-tank brawler in the game, especially in this super heavy tank meta now with Draco and Kit being a strong combo. Spike is still going to be somewhat useful to take out the strongest of tanks. Now even though Spike may be ranked lower on this list than he ever has been before, something that has stuck with him since the start has been his solid DPS and long range. Just being able to chip away at the enemies with the help from his curveball star power while also dealing loads of damage from close up just makes him playable basically anywhere. And it's probably like, Brand, Spike has always been ranked so high in your legendary ranking videos, like why is he so low? But it's all because of his lack of health. Now don't get me wrong, Spike can deal lots of damage as he always could, but his lack of health makes him a liability to his team. He struggles to stay alive since a lot of the strong meta brawlers can outrange him like Bell and Byron, and they can just easily counter Spike. Alright guys, the next legendary brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Leon. Now Leon is still a really good brawler because of his hypercharge, and at least they didn't nerf that. The stat buffs that you receive that you can stack with the Invisi-Heal star power makes it so that you can still move quickly but also heal up at the same time. What's great too is that if you attack even though you're invisible from the hypercharge, you will still receive the healing from Invisi-Heal. Now one of the hugest things that has been a hit to Leon in this meta is his proximity damage being decreased from 40% to 30%. This just means he's going to deal less damage at his maximum attack range, and this is going to make it harder for Leon to get kills. Now something I haven't really talked about before, like with the nerfs with Leon, he actually did receive a nerf to his supercharge rate at max distance too. This is going to also make it even harder for Leon to not only charge his super but also charge his hypercharge, which is what made him broken in the first place. I just have mixed feelings, like these were good nerfs to balance Leon out, and even though he's not super weak in the meta, he is going to be weaker than the other legendaries that's in this list. Alright guys, the next legendary we're going to talk about is going to be Amber. Now even though Amber has received a nerf to her Dancing Flames gadget, it can still do a decent amount of damage. It's still a great way to deal constant damage to stationary targets or if the enemies aren't moving vertically to avoid the radius of the flames. Now ever since Amber's nerf to her Dancing Flames gadgets, there's been no buffs or nerfs to her, but she's still been seeing a rise in her play rate. A main part of that is that Amber has just become an underrated brawler that isn't that hard to play. She can still deal lots of damage with a full bar of ammo, and she is a very auto-aim friendly brawler. Now the thing that makes Amber really shine in this meta and what has gotten her to rise up in the meta just a little bit is her ability to shred tanks and maintain area control. Like if you can play Amber on control oriented game modes like Hot Zone and Gem Grab, then you would definitely find success with her. Also, if you can lane against short range tanks and assassins that you can outrange, I mean that's the main reason why Amber is actually not bad in the meta right now. Alright guys, the next legendary brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Meg. Now Meg is actually an underrated underrated pick inside a knockout and other game modes you will find sharpshooters in because she counters them really well. If you can dodge a few attacks and then run towards them in your mech suit, there's no way they're going to be able to deal enough damage to take her down. Now, not only is Meg going to be good to counter like sharpshooter long range brawler, she's going to be very good to counter tanks too. You can use her high DPS from the mech to deal heavy amounts of damage to the tanks, and then use your swiping super to do even more damage to lower the enemies down quicker or to just finish them off completely. The main reason being is because without that mech suit, like, Meg is pretty much nothing. It doesn't take long for Meg to chain her super back, and even if you die trying to get it back, at least you'll respawn with the mech anyways, so it's kind of a win-win situation for Meg. Alright guys, the next legendary brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Surge. Now Surge is still a very solid anti-tank brawler on maps and game modes that have a lot of walls, since he can jump over them with his super. Surge can use his super to leap over walls and surprise enemies that could be trying to hide and heal up from him. This can be very effective, especially against brawlers like throwers who have no shot at surviving Surge in that situation. Now the main reason why Surge is getting a little bit more playing time in the meta now is because of the rise in play rate from tanks. Since Surge can deal some pretty good damage even when combined with his super landings, he can be a great counter to tanks. I just find it so interesting, like Surge hasn't received any balances, no buffs, no nerfs since the last legendary ranking video I made, but he's still seeing a rise in play rate. Like, it's funny to me. Alright guys, the next legendary brawler we're going to be talking about is the newest legendary brawler in the game, Draco. Now when playing Draco, it's important to always use your super whenever you need to apply pressure and regain control of the map. His super is a great way to play aggressive and use that fire breathing attack to apply a ton of pressure onto the enemies. Now if you are ever in a tight situation where you need to run away and escape, or if you need to close down a distance because you're chasing down an enemy, just use your super and use that 20% increase in reload speed to catch up to them. In certain situations where you're trying to escape death, using your super might be your savior. If you're extremely low, however, you might end up wasting your super if you die. So just kind of gauge the situation and use it wisely. Now something that's pretty cool about Draco is if you're already in your alternate form using your fire breathing ability and you can chain up another super, I'd recommend just using it again. You need to try to chain up your next super within those 10 seconds so you could potentially stay in that alternate form even longer. This will just allow you to continue your aggression and heal up if you are using his healing star power. This is a great way to increase your survivability in general, since you can instantly gain health to stay alive. This can be the difference maker to help you escape, because if you are low and alive, it's better than just being dead and waiting to respawn. Alright guys, the next legendary brawler we're going to be talking about, this is going to shock everybody, it's actually Kit. Now Kit is considered to be one of the best legendaries in the game now because of the buffs that he received. The fact that Kit received the buff to his main attack damage by 200, it changes a lot of interactions between other brawlers that end up with him winning. Now the other thing that has also helped Kit rise in the meta recently is the buff to his damage when he uses his super. Now with his super damage being increased by 200 like his main attack, finish off the enemies quicker if his teammates can just help him out in that department. Okay, now the true reason why Kit has risen up in the meta drastically is because he pairs so well with tanks. If you think about it, since Kit has received all these buffs, it gives the players an incentive to pair Kit up with tanks since that's his strong suit. So now with Kit having a higher play rate, so will tanks and the tank counters within the meta, which is something I personally didn't see coming. But okay, the next legendary brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Cordelius. Now okay, the whole reason why still one of the best brawlers in the game right now is because of his hypercharged complete darkness. When activated, Cordelius' super slows enemies down in the shadow realm. This will just help you close down the distance between you and the enemies even more to get that confirmed kill. Using your hypercharge or just using your super in general, the enemies won't be able to use anything besides their main attacks, so that's when you gotta really rush them down and try to kill them. Just don't be scared to rush them down, especially if you can out DPS you or you outrange them. Now I know a lot of people still love using the replanting gadget with Cordelius, but now you can't use it in the shadow realm, and this is where the poison mushroom gadget comes into the meta. If you do decide to run the poison mushroom gadget, activate the gadget first and then use your super onto the enemy. This way you can use the gadget in the shadow realm to help you take down that enemy. Usually you wouldn't be able to use your gadget in the shadow realm now like the replanting gadget, but if you activate it before, then you'll actually be able to use it. Alright guys, the next legendary brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Sandy. Now the main reason why Sandy is easily shotted up to being one of the strongest brawlers in the game now is brand new hypercharged Swift Winds. When activated, Sandy's next super prevents affected enemies from using any attacks, supers, gadgets, or hypercharges for the next half second. Increase the movement speed of Sandy and his teammates when they are in range of it by 20%. What makes Sandy even crazier in this meta is that it only takes 10 main attack shots to actually charge up his hypercharge, and if you think about it, that's not even that much at all. I mean, this is what is easily shotting Sandy up into the S tier. He cycle up his super and his hypercharge just goes crazy during during the matches. Well, anyway guys, if you guys enjoyed that ranking video, I highly recommend go check out this ranking video right here.